Page 407. Finally recognize, you human beings of Earth, that you yourselves have contributed to all the terrible things of your world through your daily life, and are contributing further, because you are, as a part of the monstrous earthly society, complicit in and responsible for everything. For the human dignitylessnesses, for the hatred, for the jealousy, for the death penalty, for the wars, acts of terror and crimes of all kinds, for all the misery and affliction, for all the brutality, acts of Gewalt and ugliness, for the greed, vices, and pathological cravings, debauchery, and all other Ausartungen. Only when you finally recognize this fact, and look round for the real truth of all truth, and find it in the creational laws and recommendations and follow it, only then will you finally act rightly and do everything for the best of yourselves and of your world. However, it is not easy for you human beings to do the right thing in order to build up in yourselves, in your inner nature, a completely different individuality, which raises you up in the consciousness and shows you things of the life which are of such high values that you never could have dreamed of. And if you create a new individuality in your inner nature, then also let it act outwardly, by means of which a completely different and new world builds up around you, as well as valuable interhuman relationships come about, and love, harmony, peace, and freedom amongst all of you. The doing in this wise is a very serious matter, but you will not find out by yourselves what you must do in order to achieve everything and to direct the whole into solid, better, and good forms, and precisely out of this reason have human beings been arisen amongst you, who have worked themselves up to ones having knowledge, wise ones, and to proclaimers, to prophets, by finding out and learning the causes and effects of the nature and of the creational laws and recommendations, in order to teach you about the knowledge one, so that you might recognize the truthly laws and recommendations of creational form, and put them into practice in the life, so that it may go well with you. The true prophets, the proclaimers of the truth, they are your true leaders, you human beings of Earth, because they know and understand the creational laws and recommendations better than you. However, truly, they can only teach and explain these to you, because learning and acquiring them in yourselves, through rationality and intellect, is something that you alone must do. And in fact, out of free will and without the urgings of the prophets. The prophets, the true prophets, namely, may only teach you, but not urge you to accept their teaching, because this would be the equivalent of a coercion to the belief. And through a coercion to the belief, you would learn nothing, and not find the truth in yourselves. Rather, you would only become the pattern of a new belief, without finding the truthly truth of all truth in yourselves and in the creational laws and recommendations. And there have been, and still are, many so-called spiritual leaders and false prophets in your world, of whom you have assumed, and continue to assume, that they understand the things of the truth better than you. But truthfully, they have said and continue to say this, only because they have attempted, and also continue to attempt, to make you subserviently dependent on them, and on their false teaching, and to press you into their false teaching as a pattern. And truly, this has not brought you very far, even since time immemorial, and will also, in the future, not bring you further than that you erroneously pray and make entreaties, as you have up until now, to your gods and tin gods, as well as to your human idols, from which you will, however, never receive real help. And there have been and still are many worldly wise ones and academics since time immemorial whose wisdoms regarding spiritual and godly concerns have up to the present day not brought you human beings of earth further, because their spirituality and godliness, indeed, does not correspond to the truth of the creation and its laws and recommendations, but is only based on inventions and fantasies, which have been invented through the worldly wise and academics. The worldly wise and academics, as well as the spiritual leaders and false prophets, have lied to you, and alleged that all ways were directed to lead to the truth, irrespective of whether you are believers of a religion or a sect, or whether you belong to a philosophy or ideology. But this is complete nonsense, because the only way to the truth leads through the inner of you human beings yourselves, since it is only and exclusively there that you can find the effective truth as is pre-given through the creation and its laws and recommendations. However, you cannot find the truth through lies and deception, nor through gods and tin gods, nor through religions, sects, philosophies, and ideologies. No way leads to the real truth of all truth, because the truth itself is the way, and thus the way is also the culmination point, namely the truth itself. And it is only out of this reason that the way of the truth is spoken of, which in itself leads to the truth, and it is precisely in this that the vitality of the truth consists. If you look at and consider something lifeless, then a way leads to it which you can follow, because everything that has died makes no movement and remains in a particular place or location, in contrast to the way of the truth, which is vital and in movement. However, because the truth is something vital and in continuous movement, it is not bound to one place, and neither is it bound to a restricted religious or other belief, as well as not to God's or tin God's house. Neither a spiritual leader, a religion, a holy man, an ideologue, nor a priest, sect guru, or a teacher can lead you to the continuously moving truth, because the truth is no material place such as a church, synagogue, chapel, mosque, lodge, or temple, etc., because the effective, the truthly truth, is solely in yourselves, as well as in the creation, and in its laws and recommendations. And because the truth as way and culmination point is vital, and is continuously in motion in you yourselves, this means that the truth unstoppably extends and moves further in you. Therefore, you do not remain lying on a particular truth, rather it continues to expand more and more through your research, and as a result it grows in you, and you become ever more knowing and wise. This in contrast to the religious belief, which is a firmly defined and non-expandable, unprovable, and refutable illusion which is poor both in terminology and argument, and is based on pretenses of false facts. Truly, you human beings of earth, you do not live according to the love of the creation, just as you do not create the true love in yourselves, and therefore you live your own life according to the pre-given of your own scheme, in which anxiety and fear of many things inhere, as however also anger and brutality, Gewaltsamkeit, violence and strife, hatred, jealousy, pathological craving for revenge, pathological craving for retaliation, coarseness, affliction, tribulation, and despair, etc. Already, when you have recognized and understood this fact, will you comprehend a tiny iota of the real truth in yourselves. But you can only recognize and understand this truth, providing you know how to look at these things which belong to your life. And it is the true prophets who teach you human beings this mode of looking, through the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life. And truly, you can only look at the truth with the truth itself, Not, however, with anxieties and fear, not with hopes, and not with a religious belief, as well as not through a veil of lying words of false teachers and false prophets, and also not with philosophies and ideologies, because if you want to experience the real truth, then you must not be dependent on anybody or anything, but only bestir yourselves according to your own will and interest, in absolutely your own energy and power, and turn to the truth that you can only find in yourselves as well as in the creational laws and recommendations. Therefore, consider that you shall only ever be yourselves, and that there is no teacher, no leader, no guru, no master, no prophet, and also no other authority through which you might find the truth, because only you can do this all alone in yourselves, because truly, in this case, there is only you all alone, who must work in yourselves and find the truth. Even the true prophets cannot give you the truth, or show you a way to the truth, because for yourselves you alone are capable of fathoming out the truth in yourselves, and also finding it, and living according to it, because none of you can change another, because the one who must change can only do this from out of himself or herself, and on his or her own. And if you recognize this truth, then you shall not fall into despair because of it, since, nevertheless, you stand in a relationship to your fellow human beings and to the world. Therefore, there is no reason for you to let either bitterness or cynicism grow in you. Nevertheless, however, the truth demands that you look the facts in the eye, namely, that you are yourselves responsible for all and everything with regard to the thoughts and feelings that you harbor, the actions that you commit, and the deeds that you do. Only you are responsible for the world and for yourselves, for everything that you think up and do, and you must become conscious of this in order to make disappear your self-pity through which you criticize your fellow human beings, insulting them, reproaching them, nagging them, and tormenting them, because through that you believe to be covering up your self-pity. Human beings of earth, you must be yourselves in every wise, and therefore you yourselves must also determine over yourselves. So also over your thoughts, feelings, actions, and your efforts, so that you may not be dependent on anybody, and be the true might over yourselves, free from gods and hingods and their servants, who subjugate, enslave, and exploit you. And it is truly the truth that you can, without any outward influence, without authorities and without coercion, as well as without anxiety or fear of punishment, build up in the core of your inner nature a new individuality, a new speciality with a renewal and positive expansion of your character and your personality, providing you consciously revolutionize your old characteristics and bring forth a psychological developmental change out of your own power. And if you bring forth the developmental change in yourselves, then you will no longer be ones who have got very badly out of the control of the good human nature, no longer full of anxiety, brutality, jealousy, and fear, neither full of greed, vice, and hatred of all kinds, neither full of violence, pathological craving for war, pathological craving for revenge, pathological craving for retaliation, crimes, and quarrelsomeness, nor full of uncalmness, envy, and desires, etc. Truly, all these Ausartungen are not pre-given through the creational laws and recommendations. Therefore, they are also not expression forms of your nature, but rather an evil machination of yourselves, through which you have also built up your worldwide rotten society, in which you inevitably have to live, and in which your daily existence takes place. And indeed, For as long as you fail to turn to the real truth, and therefore fail to follow extensively the laws and recommendations of creational form, because everything will only change to the better if you bind yourselves as individuals and as society with the real truth, and therefore with the nature, and thus also with the creational laws and recommendations.